Assalamu alaikum to all our listeners and viewers. I welcome you all to another exciting and educating edition of the Health and Fitness Show. I'm Fahad Batten, your host for today, and I hope and pray that all of us are fit and healthy by the grace of Almighty Allah. I do pray that we all had a nice and positive week so far and looking forward for a nice and lovely, relaxing weekend. This program is broadcasting from the studios of Inspire FM today on 25th of April 2024. And the time just past 6 p.m. We are casting our positive vibes to all our lovely people in Luton and all the surrounding areas of Luton like Dunstable, Harpenden, Bedford. And our positive airways reaching our listeners through listening to us via Inspire FM app or website, or definitely radio. And definitely you may be listening or viewing us through our Facebook and YouTube channels. So all we have to say is good evening and welcome. If you're listening to this show on Sunday or any other Thursday, that means it's repeat. But hey ho, today is not. It is live because today is 25th of April 2024. So, according to latest studies in UK, 79% of adults experience stress at least once a month, and 74% feels overwhelmed or vulnerable or unable to cope with some points in their life in past years. And I must say, only 13% of employees feel comfortable discussing their mental health openly at work. It is very, very stressful in many different ways if we read those stats. And I must say, the stress levels of most of the people during COVID was high. But since the era of COVID is passed away in many different ways, shape, or form, it has a different connotation altogether. Yes, you may have guessed what our topic for today is. If you haven't guessed it yet, so let me tell you. Today we are talking about stress management. Yes, you have heard me correctly. We are talking about stress management. And you will be glad to know I'm not the person who will be doing all the talking. I will be the person who will be posing all the questions to our lovely guest. And we are very, very fortunate today that we have a very, very lovely guest with us. He's expert in this field, and he has tons and tons of experience underneath his belt. He is doing this work in quite some time. He is the Chief De-Stress Officer for the Stress Management Society, and he is none other than Neil Shah. Good evening, Neil. Neil, can you hear me? Neil, can you hear me? I think so. We are having some kind of a difficulty or delay in my Neil. Hi, can you hear me? I think so. I'm having some kind of a difficulty in approaching Neil in some sense. Hopefully, we will be getting through to Neil in very quick seconds. Neil, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Neil. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I was trying to contact directly through that. For some reason, I can't think so. You can hear me through that. But anyhow, we have another way of communicating with each other, which is very good in some way, shape, or form. So, good evening, Neil, and welcome to our show tonight. Just a quick, as I have. Just literally said that you today as a guest we have Neil Shah with us. He's the Chief De-Stress Officer at the Stress Management Society. So Neil, if you don't mind, give a quick introduction about yourself and tell us about your field.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. So as I said, I'm Neil Shah. I'm the Chief De-Stressing Officer at the Stress Management Society. The Stress Management Society is a non-profit organisation that I set up. It's now 21 years ago. With a vision of creating a happier, healthier, more resilient world. Essentially to provide advice, support and guidance to both individuals and organisations that really want to understand the impact of stress and want to be able to take action to do something about it. One of the reasons I'm here today is a campaign that we've been running for a very long time, Stress Awareness Month, which happens in April every year. It's an opportunity for us to have space and time to talk about an issue that isn't an easy or comfortable conversation for many. And I guess part of my background, part of my backstory is not necessarily my professional or academic experience, but it's the fact that I came into this field off the back of a first-hand experience. I know what it's like to be struggling with stress and poor mental health, because the experience that led me to set this organization up resulted in me having a breakdown and attempting to end my own life. That was 21 years ago.
Wow.
So I know what it's like to be in that situation where everything gets too much. You are overwhelmed and you can't see a way forward. And I wish that today in 2024 that we were a lot better at dealing with mental health issues and people that are really struggling. But sadly, it's worse today than when we started the organization in 2003. So it's very important we have these conversations, and I'm grateful to you to give me the time and the space to be able to discuss such an important subject.
And Neil, I must say thank you for accepting our invitation to be part to become a guest and discuss this very unique and pressing topic we face nowadays. Because as we all know, and as I've just said, some of the stats which has been published through your paper, your press release, which will be in our chats hopefully soon as well. That the stress is we all been in that situation where one way or another we have been facing severe kind of a stress. And these kind of things sometimes becomes a very unique spiral effect, and it creates more problem than solutions in many different ways, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's interesting because you referenced it as unique. I wish it was unique. It's not. It's actually one of the most common issues that we are experiencing on the planet. 1 in 4 people experience poor mental health in any given year. In Western society, the main cause of death for a man under the age of 45 is suicide. It's rapidly becoming the same for a 15 to 29-year-old, something that we have discussed when we spoke previously was, there are other issues that we've taken action to shut the world down for. One that we were all familiar with a few years ago when the world was shut down for a health issue, which wasn't as critical an issue for the vast majority of the population as the one we're facing today. Mm-hmm. To give context to these figures, in 2020, in the month of October in Japan, more people took their own life than died from COVID the whole year.
Wow.
One subject they shut the whole world down for, the other subject didn't even get discussed. And this is really why we need to get better at having the uncomfortable conversations, to make it okay to not be okay, to give spaces where people can open up and express how they're feeling mentally, emotionally. But also, we need to start reframing vulnerability not as a weakness, But expressing our vulnerability is a superpower. It's the strong amongst us that can put their hands up and say, you know what, yeah, I'm struggling. I'm not really coping particularly well. Because it's a lot easier to pretend like everything's okay and to mask it. And we do live in a society where there are big barriers to people putting their hand up and asking for help. There is still today a huge amount of guilt, shame, and stigma associated with the subjects of mental health across British society, but also particularly in some demographic groupings. People from Southeast Asia are less likely to talk about mental health. And I think that's something that's also important to consider. I appreciate you may have a broad demographic, but I understand from our previous conversations, there may be a lot of people listening today that come from cultures and backgrounds where you just don't talk about stress or mental health because there is no language or framework for it.
Exactly. And there are times when it says, yeah, it's a little bit of stress, or sometimes these little bit of stress which we ignore becomes big problem, and it is like a boiling lava stuck in a volcano, and it's keep boiling to a point where it erupt in a very unauthorized way in a location where it should not be done, in a way end up destroying relationships and workplace and whatnot. And definitely it has its own connotation, and it creates a very awkward chain of events after that.
So I guess the way to consider it is something that I think that many people struggle with, is to define stress. Is what is stress? You ask everyone, are you stressed? And everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm so stressful, so much going on. Right? And we use that term regularly and very easily without really fully understanding what it means. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've asked people all over the world to describe to me what their definition of stress is, and people give such a variety of different responses. In fact, I know that you work in the medical system, and if you ask people in the NHS or from a medical background, they will give you a biological, physiological definition of stress. You speak to people in the psychology community, therapists or people from a psychiatric background, they're going to give you kind of a different definition of stress. They might share a psychosocial model or the impact on your psychology. You speak to people in the academic field. There's universities like Harvard and Roehampton in the UK that have been doing research on stress, and they will have their definition and academic kind of models around stress. But what's really interesting is there are many other organizations and other fields of expertise that look at stress. One is engineers, structural engineers. They know a lot about stress, but not to people. Engineers would look at the impact of stress to a material, to an object, to a building, to a structure. And actually, our definition of stress came about through a chance conversation I had with a structural engineer on a plane on the way to New York. We had a project with the United Nations at the time, and I was flying out there, and we got talking. We spoke about a variety of different things, and eventually the conversation got around to what we do for a living. So what do you do for a living, my friend? And he said, I'm a stress tester. And I thought, oh my God, fascinating. That's amazing. I'm in stress management too. What are you, a doctor, psychologist, professor? And he's looking at me like, what are you talking about? Anyway, the long and short of it is that he was a specialist in stress testing, but to structures and materials.
Exactly.
So we ended up having a really fascinating conversation, which ultimately led to me inquiring how he would define stress as a force in physics. And he gave me a formula, an equation, F over A equals P. He actually wrote it on a napkin. I was like, that's great, but I have no idea what you're talking about. I wasn't very good with equations and formulas at school. I wasn't very good with much at school, to be honest. And he ended up kind of helping me to understand what he meant with this formula. So F over A equals P stands for force over area equals pressure. And the way to visualize this, if we imagine a bridge, let's say Tower Bridge in London, an easy bridge to visualize. And let's say one particular day, Transport for London have gone on strike because they're fed up with their conditions, and TfL are not looking after them. So they basically parked all their red double-decker buses onto the bridge, filled to the top with union reps. They're eating their sandwiches, drinking tea, and talking about whatever their demands are. Now, the black cabs have decided to get involved because they're fed up of Uber stealing all their business. So they parked their black cabs onto the bridge. We've got protesters on the bridge. Obviously, there's protests in London every week at the moment to support, obviously, the awful things that are happening in Palestine. So let's say the protesters have climbed onto the bridge and they're getting involved as well. In addition to that, the animal activists have broken down all the gates and fences at London Zoo. The animals have escaped and rushed onto the bridge. And on top of all of that, this weather that we've been having recently, it's crazy. And it's led to all the excess rain has led to a tidal surge on the River Thames. And HMS Belfast has managed to get washed onto the bridge. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, we've got a couple of Airbus A380s that have had to emergency land on top of the bridge. It doesn't matter how well built the bridge is. Do we agree, Fahad, that whether it's Tower Bridge in London, the Golden Gate Bridge, Sydney Harbour Bridge, every bridge on the planet, if enough pressure is applied for long enough, that bridge will ultimately collapse, right? It can only bear a certain amount of load.
Indeed.
But before it collapses, how will you know that it's not coping well? What are the early signs and feedback we'll get before it collapses?
Cracks,
Absolutely.
some wear and tear, bits and bobs here and there. So, yeah.
Bowing, buckling, groaning, creaking, fractures, cracks, etc. So it's given us feedback. And when it's given us that feedback, you've got one of two choices to prevent the bridge from collapsing. Either we take some of that pressure and load and demand off, or we make the bridge stronger with concrete blocks, iron girders, and reinforce it to bear the load effectively. Now, when this engineer is giving me that definition of stress, my first thought is, oh my gosh, people are exactly the same.
Exactly.
Every human being on this planet, bar none, if enough pressure is applied for long enough, they too, just like the bridge, will ultimately collapse. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do, whether you're a special forces soldier or a stay-at-home mother, everybody has an ultimate breaking point. Some people have a higher threshold, but we all will ultimately break. Now, why is this even more relevant today? We live in a crazy world. It feels like an episode of Black Mirror. If you've ever watched Black Mirror on Netflix, if you haven't, don't bother, because walking outside your front door, it seems to be crazier than anything you can find in Hollywood or Bollywood. Exactly. Because the world is just, you couldn't make this story up. So what's happening is, on top of the challenges of life and family and finance and work and daily pressures, on top of that, you've got all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And the fact that, the climate might collapse and we might have World War III and, there's a global economic crisis, and et cetera, et cetera. So it becomes too much. And many people are finding their bridges are so overloaded, they are struggling to cope. Mm-hmm. This is what we're seeing, particularly amongst young people. The last 3 or 4 years hasn't been kind to many of us, because what happened during the COVID period, we've never really gone back to how things used to be. London was recently voted as the loneliest city on the planet. I'm not proud of that as a born and bred Londoner. The fact that, there is almost 9 million people that live here, but you can often feel completely lonely and isolated, even though you're very rarely alone. So part of this is we're losing that sense of community. People are feeling lonely and isolated. In Britain, we actually have a government minister for loneliness, but not a lot of people don't appreciate that. We actually do. As with most government positions, they're token gestures. They're not really making any practical difference. But it was recognized through a program and research we were involved with in 2018 that chronic loneliness is becoming a bigger issue, to the point where it's affecting people's mental health. It's only got worse since COVID. And I think this is why it's really important we understand that even though stress and poor mental health is on the rise, there are some vaccines and antidotes. The cultural vaccines and antidotes are love, compassion, empathy, community, looking out for each other. And this is really where you don't need to take a pill. It doesn't come out of a blister pack or from a syringe. It involves us showing up better for the people around us. And this is really what, taking on board the name of your station, that I'm hoping that our conversation can inspire and empower people to take action. So not just to improve for ourselves, but for all of us, so we can look out for each other, because there is a direct correlation between the degradation of community and the increase in poor mental health and suicidality. Indeed. So if we know that to be the case, let's tackle it at its root.
Exactly. So one of the things which I do like to ask is, what type of typical warning signs to see? Because you have given us such a beautiful example of stress having a bridge. What kind of a typical warning signs we see in ourselves or in others where that can overstress ourselves or experience of burnout?
Well, it's a good question, but there isn't a standard default response to that because it's different in different people. The key thing, Fahad, is changes in our normal behaviors. So, part of this involves having self-awareness to understand what our normal behaviors are, because often we don't notice. They call it the boiling frog syndrome. Now, I love animals. I'm a vegan. I would never harm an animal. It's a story for the sake of a story, right? But if you have a frog and you have a pan of cold water, you have a pan of boiling water. You brought it up to boiling point. It's bubbling away. If you put a frog in a pan of boiling water, it will jump straight out because it's hot and it will burn. So it will jump straight out the hot water. Mm-hmm. But if you put a frog in a pan of cold water and very slowly over an extended period of time raise the temperature to boiling level, the frog doesn't know it's being boiled to death. This analogy is perfect to describe the world we find ourselves in today. Mm-hmm. Many of us are very slowly being boiled to death. It's the temperature is increasing and we don't even recognize it. So part of this is to be able to have activities and routines as part of our daily schedule to check in with ourselves so we understand what is our normal behavior. Because here's the thing, I talk a lot, right? I talk for a living. That's what I do. I love to talk. You would know if I'm compromised because I'll go quiet, I'll withdraw, I'll disengage. There could be someone else, my partner, she's quite quiet. She's not a loud, gregarious character. She holds herself together and she'll speak when there's a need to speak, but she's not kind of as outgoing as I am. I will know when she's compromised because she actually gets louder and she will be more animated and she will be, more forthright with her language and she'll speak out more and raise her tone, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The key thing is the change in the behavior. Some people, when I'm stressed, there's been periods in my life where I will turn to food. I don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking a long time ago. I don't do drugs. But the thing that I still often will reach for is food. But also, I know people, friends, who when they're stressed or emotionally compromised, they just don't eat. Do you see? So again, the behaviors in themselves, we might be saying, well, overeating is a sign of stress. Well, not in everyone. Mm-hmm. Getting loud and animated is a sign of stress. Well, not for everyone. It's different. The key thing is the change in behavior. Some people, when they're stressed or feeling overwhelmed or their mental health is compromised, they stop caring about their appearance. They don't wash, shave, put on clean clothes, iron their shirt. But some people, and I actually had a colleague that was turning up every day with extra makeup and extra shiny shoes and putting in so much effort, over the top effort, because they were masking. Does that make sense? And some people might sleep lots more and they go to bed and stay in bed for 14 hours. Some people just can't sleep. Mm-hmm. So the key thing here, if you want to recognize the signs and symptoms in you, it'd be changes in your normal behaviors. And if you want to recognize in others, it's again the changes in their normal operating behaviors. But as we are rapidly moving towards a society that's quite hands-off and we're checking with each other virtually, I wish I was able to be in the studio with you, but even it's ironic that I'm sitting here, dialing in from my home. So what I'm saying is we have to work extra hard to be able to check in with people when it's virtual, particularly as many people are now working from home or hybrid working. They don't see their colleagues every day. I think it's really, really important that we get to know the people that we live, work, play with, the people that are around us. So that way we get better at picking up when someone's not right. Because also, how do we start any conversation with the most pointless question in any language, in any part of the world? It doesn't matter what language you ask the question in. How are you? It's ¿qué tal? All of these questions, whatever language you speak in, the answer is typically the default response. Fahad, if I ask you how you are, what is your normal standard default response to that question?
I'm okay. But on that note, I must say, wow, the time has passed really quickly because this is one of the response I will give because we just have 30 seconds before the end, before we approach our break. So when we come back from our break, I like to continue our discussion from this point onwards. And we do like to know how important mindsets are and what effectively the 5 daily essentials a person should do in a regular time. So stay tuned. We will be back after these very short messages.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat al-Asr.
लुटन और इसके मसाफात में नमाज असर का वक्त हुआ चाहता है.
This azan is ltd.co.uk.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه المقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Would you like to sponsor the azan? If so, give us a call on 01582 481810 or email us on info@inspirefm.org.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Any health advice given, whether general, physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your
I'll hang up on the phone.
If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Hello? Got me, yeah?
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all our listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm Fahad Batten, your host for this evening, and today we are talking about stress management with our very own Neil Shah, the Chief De-Stress Officer at the Stress Management Society. Hi, Neil.
Hey, buddy.
This program is broadcasting live today from the studios of Inspire FM on 25th of April 2024. The time is now 6:30 p.m. And you are listening. We are casting our positive vibes to all our lovely people in Luton and all the surrounding areas of Luton, like Dunstable, Harpen, and Bedford. Our positive air is reaching all our listeners through our Inspire FM radio app, website, as well as you can view us through Facebook and YouTube channels. So before we went on break, we were having a very unique and very interesting communication with Neil. And in that communication, I completely forgot to involve our listeners. So listeners, if you have any questions or query about stress and stress management, okay, or you have been in among those 75% people who have experienced stress in last 1 month or so, give us a call on 01582481822 or send us your comments, message, text message, through I completely muddled my words. If you were one of those 71% of people who have been experiencing stress in last 1 month or so, give us a call on 01582481822, or you can send your message via a text message or WhatsApp through on Inspire FM numbers, which is 0779 481822. I repeat, 0779 481822. So, Neil, coming back to you, can you hear me firstly?
Loud and clear.
Oh, perfectly. At least we do not have the problem before, like we were having earlier, which is good. Right. So before we went on break, we just literally scratched the surface by asking the definition. And I must say, you have given a very beautiful analogy of your experience of that person who was a stress tester, and I loved it. I personally loved it. And if anybody who have missed that part, I really urge you to go in the beginning of the show and listen the whole thing. What on this part of the show we want to focus on is what does the 5 daily essentials, which is what effect does it have, the stress does it have on those 5 daily essentials of our life, which is diet, sleeping, water intake, socialization, exercise, and how can we respond on those problems?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because we already know, everybody knows. If you ask people how much water should you drink, so Fahad, what is the commonly accepted guidance on how much water we should consume?
Somewhere between 2.5 liter, 3 liter plus minus,
which is
around 12 to 15 glasses of water.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, because you're kind of in the medical field, you may be able to give a bit more of an exact response. But for the most part, generally speaking, most people have heard 2 liters of water a day, right?
Yeah.
So most people accept that. Now, I'm just going to flag that these are all nonsense. There's no science behind it. They're guidelines. It's just suggestions. There are so many factors that influence how much water you should drink. Based on age, sex, kind of ambient temperature, levels of activity. There's a variety of different factors. But, let's just say that the guidance of 2 liters of water is correct. Food, fruits and vegetables. How many bits of fruits and vegetables should we eat in a day? What is the commonly accepted guidance?
5 fruits a day, something like that.
Again, there is no science behind this. I don't agree with these statements, but most people have heard the 5 a day. When it comes to sleep, what is commonly accepted is the amount of sleep we should have in a night. We've all heard it.
8 hours a day, plus minus.
Absolutely. 7-8 hours a day is, again, what most people have heard. Again, this is not true. If you've ever read Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep, you'll know that there are a variety of different factors that influence how much sleep you have. And we're not all the same. Some people need more, some people need less sleep. But we've all heard the 7 to 8 hours. if we move a step forward, most people have also heard that you should walk 10,000 steps a day because, they've been doing a lot of promotion around that. So people have heard that. At some level, people have heard around kind of the importance of socializing. Anyone that's got children or animals, that if you don't socialize your children and your puppies when they're young, they become a nightmare. So, at some level, you'll understand these things. So what I'm suggesting here is not new information. We know this stuff. But Fahad, that is the problem. We live in a society of overload. Everybody knows everything. Mm-hmm. We've heard it all before, but nobody does anything. Knowing you need to drink 2 liters of water a day, eat 5 bits of fruits and vegetables, sleep 7 or 8 hours a night, walk 10,000 steps, and socialize with other human beings, knowing that information makes no difference to your life. You have to actually do it. And this is where we have such a disconnect. The 3 most dangerous words in the English language, according to me, in my humble opinion, are I know that. I'm like, know and do nothing with it. The phrase knowledge is power is nonsense. It's a lie. Knowledge is only power if you apply it. Knowledge is only power if you take action. Knowledge in and of itself does not make you powerful, because the word power quite literally means, again, I encourage all of our listeners, don't believe a word I say, look this up for yourself. You look up the word power in the dictionary, it means the ability to do or act. And really what I'm hoping that we can do today is inspire, as in the name of your radio station, and empower, give people the ability to do or act. So what I'm saying here is we know this stuff is important because we've heard it all before. But are you doing it? I have no interest in what people know. I have a lot of interest in what people do. Because there's so many things right now that we know are good and we know are bad. But ignoring this information, taking no action against this information, means the problems get worse, not better, both at an individual level and a societal and a global level. So right now, what I'm saying to people is, okay, if we know staying hydrated is important, are you getting enough water? Are you drinking enough for you? And if you're someone that's particularly active, you might need 3-4 liters a day. If you're someone that has a more sedentary lifestyle, you're shorter, slimmer, maybe you need 2.5 liters. I'm not here to say how much you should drink, but understand what it is like for you when you are well hydrated and when you are not. Again, with diet, you can sit there eating greasy fried foods and kebabs and all of this kind of stuff, chocolate biscuits, cakes, sweets, and you might think that's great. But ultimately, everyone knows there are certain foods that give you energy and vitality and make you feel good. And there are certain foods that are like drugs. You'll feel good for 5 minutes, but you will feel worse afterwards when it wears off. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the, again, I'm not here to tell people what to eat, but we're intelligent adults and you have a really powerful biofeedback mechanism. Your body will tell you what it needs and what it wants and what serves it. Sleep, again, if you wake up feeling rested and refreshed, you have had enough sleep. I'm not here to say how much it should be, but getting to bed at a reasonable time, having a good wind down routine, sleep hygiene is so important. Anyone with children knows exactly what I'm talking about. You prepare a child for bed with a story, a cuddle, a warm drink, a bath, a lullaby, a story. And you avoid sugar, television, video games with children at bedtime because it gets them excited. Well, if we know it's important with children, why do we think we're immune as adults? Why do we sit in front of the television till late at night with an iPad in one hand and the phone in the other with a cup of tea or whatever else and think that we're immune to the rules that apply to children? So get enough good quality sleep. Socialization. We know that when you are struggling mentally and emotionally, you tend to withdraw. You don't want to see people. But we also know, how do you feel when you spend time with friends, family, doing things that you enjoy, having fun, laughter, social activities? Okay, aside from the family politics, often we walk away from those things, we feel good, right? So
exactly.
Making sure that you have time for that. And also, the human body was designed for movement. A lack of exercise will literally not only kill you, but it will totally destroy the quality of your life in later years. Now, you will see people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that look after their bodies, and then their bodies will look after them in later life. If you don't, you are literally creating problems for later in life. And I'm not necessarily talking about going to the gym and lifting heavy weights and running marathons and Ironmans or whatever else. All I'm saying is get out, walk, Put your shoes on, and it doesn't matter if it's raining a day like this, get your umbrella out, get some fresh air and move your body. Instead of using the lift or the escalators, use the stairs. Get off the bus or the train and stop early. Park your car a little bit further away. Get those extra steps in, because moving your body is what it was designed for. And there is so many both health, physical, mental, and emotional benefits to moving. For me, walking is moving meditation.
Indeed. So, if we take those on, what are the best? How could we explain some disadvantages way people coping up with their stress, and how does these stress flow in their whole livelihood?
Well, if I understand you correctly, the disadvantage of managing your stress. Well, the first thing here is if we sit here and go through, a variety of different strategies and techniques to manage your stress. My second book was called The 10-Step Stress Solution. And, if I started to go through some of the key things in that book, and step one is making sure that we have time for some mindfulness practice, that we're journaling and taking our thoughts out and putting them onto paper. And it's really also important to have some time where you can unplug from your technology, go for a walk, time for socialization, time to talk and express yourself, ensuring that we're eating healthy home-cooked meals. By the time I get to 0.4 or 0.5, people are more stressed out than before I started. Because they think, I'm busy, I've got all this stuff to do, I've got kids, I've got the in-laws, I've got work, and now you're asking me time to do yoga and meditate? It's like, I ain't got time for that. So it's the paradox here is managing your stress can actually create more stress, because you've got to find time to do things that in a life that's already full and overloaded. However, we also manage to find time to watch TV, to scroll through Instagram or TikTok or whatever else. We find the time to do the things that we prioritize. The challenge is most of us are not prioritizing our mental and emotional health. In fact, the term mental health in itself has got so much stigma attached to it. If I say to you, Fahad, physical health, what comes to mind? Exercise, eating healthy, looking after yourself. Physical health, you might think of someone that's strong, fit, healthy, right? If I say to you the term mental health, what comes to mind?
Nothing.
Nothing for a lot of people. Things like depression, anxiety, stress come to mind, burnout, which is weird because physical health, mental health, why is one negative and one positive? They're both just describing either your physical state or your mental state. It's so bizarre that we have a cultural stereotype attached to the word physical health, which is around positive things, and around the term mental health, it's negative things. This is what we need to change. Because if we looked at mental health in the same way as physical health, we all have mental health. Some days it's good, and some days it's not good, right? Just like we all have physical health. Some of us have good physical health and some of us don't. The point here is if we just start looking at it as a descriptive phrase rather than being attached to any illnesses or states of disease, is where we can start taking positive action. Because of that stigma, most people don't even consider or want to admit that when they're struggling with their mental health because of how they fear they might be judged.
Indeed. While on the topic of judge, one of the stats which in your paper, which I will be putting up in the chat as well, is the work-related stress. Now, how common is work-related stress, and what are the best coping mechanism to address that work-related stress?
I think the key message I want to deliver today is there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Yes, workplace stress is extremely common because the world's a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous place. The pressures and demands that most of us are under are not sustainable. Many of us are trying to sprint for a marathon distance. You couldn't ask Usain Bolt to sprint for 26.2 miles. His body is just not designed for that. In the same way, we are not designed to live under excessive amounts of stress for extended periods of time. That's sadly what many of us are trying to do. So yes, workplace stress is very common and concerning. And one of the big factors is, for most of us, work doesn't start when you arrive at work. For many people, work starts the moment you open your eyes, because we're all attached to technology. That means we are on 24/7. When I felt exhausted after our conversation yesterday, just thinking about all the roles and responsibilities you have in your community. You wear so many hats, and like, which means that you're always on, you're always doing something. One of your roles, either in the radio or in the community or in the school, etc., etc. And many of us wear multiple hats. I do too, but that means that we're not switching off. And also, something else that happened a few years ago, for many people, work isn't a place, it's an activity. Work used to be a destination, right? Now, for many people, your home has been co-opted by your workplace. So it's not like people work from home, it's they live at work. Because if you spend more time in your residence working, then that's now your workplace, not your home, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, this is common. We're all being affected by it. And in terms of, I guess everybody's looking for that magic pill, the silver bullet for stress. I'm sorry to say there isn't one. It's about balance. It's about basically living your life in a way where you have the time to rest and recover. Usain Bolt, it's funny, I watched an interview with him, and I'm going to attempt to do his accent. I'll probably mess it up. Don't mean to cause any offense with this, but this is an interview with him several years ago when he was at the height of his athletic career. And he used to say, me wake up in the morning, me go to the gym, me do me weights, me come back, me have some food, me have some rest, then me go out, me go to the track, me do some sprints, and then me come back, me have some food, me have some rest. But the most important thing, his routine was like that. In between training sessions, there was food and rest. Food, train, rest, massage, rest, etc. Ice bath. But the key thing is, there was, during his key training periods, there was rest built into his daily routine. It was as important as the physical activity. How many of us have rest built into our daily schedule? Are you taking 10 minutes to sit down and have a cup of tea? Notice that you were preparing for this interview with a cup of tea in your hand. During the course of today, Fahad, have you actually sat down, just look out the window and drink your tea and just have 5 minutes to do nothing for white space? Most of us don't do that. Yeah. So if you are looking for a way to create more balance and harmony in your life, is to ensure that it's not about bringing new things in. I can give you 25 new activities to deal with stress. You know what? No one's going to do them. Why? Because you can't find the time to do the things you need to do in your life already. So what I'm asking you to do is just find time for you, to do nothing, to go for a walk, to sit, to watch your breath, to meditate, to pray, to whatever. Play with your pets or your children, but just have minutes during the day, every so often, maybe once every couple of hours, where you got some time just for you.
You are absolutely correct, because as you said, if we do not have that, it will automatically have a long-term effect on our health and well-being, and on our loved ones, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Of course, absolutely. And this is sadly the template that we are leaving for the younger generations. They're basically adopting a world filled with challenges, but without really an understanding how to manage their mental and emotional state. I'm coming across sadly a lot more angry, kind of disillusioned young people. When I was a young person, when I was in my teens and my early 20s, I just wanted to go out, party, have a good time, and have fun. Life was simple because we didn't have smartphones. If there was crazy things going on in the world, you wouldn't know about it. So life was simple. I'm not that old, like before anyone thinks I'm like 100 years old or something.
I absolutely agree with you, Neil, because the technology advancement in last 20 years compared to last 40 years is completely unorthodox in many different ways, shape, or form. I jumped in IT when I was 15, 16, and I know I have seen the transformation of IT from a room computer to a desk computer to a computer in your palm, i.e. smartphones, and it is revolutionary in many different ways, shape, or form. But yeah, as the stress levels have increased, unfortunately, due to these ones, if I'm not mistaken.
And I think that's it. It's we've become kind of that that swipe right generation where you want everything at the swipe of your fingertips. You want your Amazon Prime, you want your TV, your social media, you want everything. You know, you're dating everything like a swipe of a fingertip. And when you have reduced life to that, it's is it reality, or is this kind of, you know, some kind of twisted dystopian virtual reality that we find ourselves in? Most people are disconnected from actual physical presence with other human beings. And what I'm saying here is these things that we have that run our lives, let's kind of switch this up. Don't be a slave to your technology. Be a master of it. It's there to serve you. You are not there to serve it. How many people do you see that as soon as their phone rings, buzzes, bleeps, vibrates, they're like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I will answer straight away. What would you like me to do? Yes, you want me to do this thing, tick this box, you know, like this comment? And it's just like, it's ridiculous. When did we get to the point where we became enslaved by our technology? You don't need to watch a Hollywood film about zombies. It's already here. Walk around the streets of London, Luton, Birmingham, Manchester, anywhere. The zombie apocalypse is already here. People are walking around the streets, looking at my phone and not even engaging with the physical reality.
Agree. And on that note, I must say, wow, the time has passed really quickly. We just have around 3.5 minutes remaining before the end of the show. And on that note, I will say, can you please share some positive message for our lovely listeners who have listened? And definitely I want to see you again, because it's a really interesting conversation for our listeners to carry it on, inshallah, in the future episodes of Health and Fitness Show. But please share some positive messages for our listeners before we end the show.
Thank you, Fahad. Well, the theme for Stress Awareness Month this year is little by little, a little becomes a lot. And the reason we chose that is often we're thinking about all these different things we need to do to build our resilience and manage stress. Start with one thing, one little thing. You know, one little raindrop can literally create a tsunami. One spark can create a huge inferno. You know, one seed can grow an oak tree. You know, a little breeze can over time become a storm. So what I'm saying here, what can you make a commitment to right here, right now? Even if that's, I'm just going to walk for 15 minutes a day. I'm going to take 5 minutes before I go to sleep to write in my journal things that I'm grateful for. I'm going to take 5 minutes to pray or meditate. It doesn't matter what it is. Make one commitment. Because little by little, those little things can inspire other actions, which over time could literally transform your life, your family, your community, and our society. And if we all start collectively taking little actions, our collective actions come together and we start to have this cumulative effect. And this is really what I stand for. Myself and my organization is here to create a ripple of positive change, where we leave the world better than we find it. And also, we reach out and protect the most vulnerable members of our society that are struggling and aren't able to ask for help. So by taking these actions, we're also making okay for other people to take actions. And this is really where I said, don't wait for someone else to do it. Don't wait for health officials or politicians or community leaders to do it. You have the power to create the community you want to be a part of. So show up in a way where you look after yourself, which also then gives you capacity to help to look after those around you. And I genuinely believe that there is the potential for us to create a much better future, a future like the vision that John Lennon sung about in the song Imagine. You know, imagine a world with no borders, no countries, no money. You know, that's a beautiful world where we live together like as a brotherhood of man and woman. And that starts with, as I said, the 3 cultural antidotes to the challenges of modern life: love, compassion, and empathy. And that's, if I could leave with everyone with one message, that would be it. If you want some free resources to support you with this, you can find them at www.stress.org.uk. There's tons of things we put together, all free of charge, you can download and access to help you on your journey.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you so much for coming to our show. Thank you so much for sharing your wise wisdom. And I must say, I have had the pleasure of discussing a very brief chat with you before. I love it, and I will definitely love to see you back again on this show to have more interactive chat with our listeners as well, because I have tons of questions bombarded towards me which I did not get a chance to address. So next time I will definitely raise those ones as well. So thank you so much, Neil, for joining us today.
Wonderful. Lovely to see you. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And this is all for today, guys. If you missed any part of the show tonight, please, you can still watch us on Inspire FM online webpage and YouTube channels. And remember us in your duas. Until next time.